Hey everybody, it's Robert. So about a month ago, we got some unfavorable inflation numbers. So the CPI number did not drop as much as economists were hoping for. The Fed raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, putting interest rates at the highest levels we've seen since about 2008. And our government's only solution to this problem is to spend more and more money. So I think it's very, very important to see what some people are saying we need to do to get out of this mess and what we can expect moving forward in 2023. Now, before we jump into this, welcome to my channel, which is all about real estate and living in South Florida. And it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe and tap the like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm and it helps the channel grow. And to show my appreciation, here is a picture of some of our friendly Florida wildlife. So this video is about a month in the making. I remember it was, I think it was September 14th. I happened to glance over at the news and we just got a report that came out about inflation, which was not good. And they were in the Rose Garden celebrating, I guess it was the Inflation Reduction Act and some other stuff. And there was a guy playing a guitar and they were having this celebration, and I thought I was in the Twilight Zone. It was a very strange thing. And to make it even more strange, the song that the gentleman was singing was about suicide. I found this out a little bit later. So what was the report that just came out as far as inflation? All right, so here is the day, September 14th, and this is the report that just came out about inflation. Basically, to summarize, it says inflation has probably peaked. The problem is that the slide from the peak is proving to be slower than expected, dipping at a glacial pace, if any, depending on the metric. Also says the hotter than expected report triggered new forecasts that the Federal Reserve's policy tightening would continue and perhaps ramp up. And also it says high inflation is looking more entrenched, which in turn will likely spur the Federal Reserve to raise rates further for longer and perhaps in bigger than expected increments. More worrisome, core CPI is generally a more reliable forecast of the trend ticked up last month. And you can see the chart right here below that shows the consumer price index inflation numbers. Now, also at the time, as I was glancing over at the screen, what made me really take notice is the stock market was down 1,000 points at that time. And I think it closed out the day at around being down 1,200 points. And it finally hit me, and I came to the realization that we are being lied to on multiple fronts about the state and what is really going on with the real estate market and just economically in general.
Because there is actually some potential good news.
Some very good news when you look across things, showing that the Fed's medicine is starting to work.
What a great day.
So as a direct result of this inflation report, the Fed had decided, and we kind of knew this was coming, to raise interest rates by 75 basis points again in order to curb inflation. So what exactly is the Fed? So the Federal Reserve System is the central bank of the United States. It performs 5 general functions to promote the effective operation of the United States economy and more generally the public interest. Now, to put this in simpler terms, Jerome Powell, who runs the Fed, has come out and said that he will do whatever he needs to do in order to curb inflation. And unfortunately, what that means is more pain for you and I, because the way to reduce inflation is to reduce spending. And the only way to do that is to raise interest rates. Now, the biggest problem with all of this is that our government has a habit of trying to reduce inflation by just spending more money. Or maybe they're not trying to reduce inflation, but it's just very, very strange timing that they keep spending this money. Now, we all knew, or a lot of people were talking about heading towards inflation when they gave out the last stimulus package during COVID or at the end of COVID. A lot of people were talking about not doing it. They said it was a bad idea. There was plenty of money and plenty of stimulus that was never spent yet. And a lot of people said if you give this money out, it's going to cause inflation. And that's where it all started. And the media and the government in the background is saying, no, everything is fine. It's not going to cause a problem. Obviously, that's not true. They did the same thing with the Inflation Reduction Act. So we already knew we were in an inflationary period. Inflation was already starting. Some people were saying we were already in a recession. And they come out and they spend another $700 billion on this Inflation Reduction Act. And then on top of that, they spent another $300 billion on the student debt relief plan. I don't even know what the name of that is, but that's $1 trillion after it was obvious that we were already in a recession, actually. So I'm not exactly sure who's making these decisions, and I'm not really sure at this point if they're just bad decisions or they're done by design, but all I know is that they're not being honest with us about the state of the economy and why they're doing things. But I can tell you one thing, they're not helping the situation at all as far as inflation and being in a recession or headed towards a recession. This all depends on who you believe and what you believe the new definition of a recession is. Now, this brings me back to my original point about this whole video. All of this was going on, and I'm looking over at the television, and I'm seeing them in the Rose Garden in the afternoon sun, playing guitar and celebrating all this, passing this Reduction Act and the student loans and all of these things that they're talking about that are so great for the economy. And meanwhile, every single item that all of us buy that we need to survive is so expensive. From any type of grocery to gas, interest rates are, again, as high as they've ever been, or at least since 2008. And they're over here celebrating. I really thought I was in the Twilight Zone. It's really, really crazy. So again, I'm not exactly sure, and I'm pretty convinced that they're not being honest about what exactly is really happening. Now, the really concerning thing for me is back during the housing crisis of 2005 and 2008, the housing and mortgage industry crisis during that time is what caused our market crash, the economic collapse of the housing market and the whole financial sector. Stock market, the banks, they all went under, but that was caused by the crisis in the housing market, but mainly bad loans, the mortgage industry. So really what we have now is a complete 180, the total opposite of what we had back during 2005 to 2008. All of these other factors that are going on, all of these programs, all this government spending is actually destroying the economy, and that is really affecting the housing market. There's no problems with the mortgage industry. There's really no problems with the housing market other than having an inventory shortage and having interest rates as high as they've been since 2008. Now, it's really, really difficult to get a grasp of what is going on because the government and the Fed, they're really the same thing. The Fed is a government entity, so I'm really not sure who to trust, but all I know is one thing, is that as much money as the government spends, the Fed is just going to keep raising those interest rates to stop people from spending money in order to curb inflation and stop us from going into a recession. Newsflash, we are already in a recession. We are already there. So as long as the government keeps spending, Jerome Powell and the Fed are going to keep raising interest rates. Now, again, the concerning thing there is a very fine line between raising interest rates enough to curb spending just so we control inflation and to doing it a little bit too much to the point where you'd put us into a deep recession. And that is the key point right there. There's got to be a balance. Now, again, the crazy part to all this is if you look at the general definition of a recession that we've all used for the last, I don't even know how long as there has been a definition for recession, we have been in a recession since mid-summer of 2022. So we're already there. Now, Jerome Powell also said that it's also important that they hike rates now while earnings are still strong, employment is still high, and the economy can absorb some of the shock than to wait too long for the economy to overheat, and then it'll be much more difficult to get it under control. In addition to that, they were also mentioning the employment rate. Now, this is likely to increase in an effort to restore price stability. Now, they're predicting going from 3.8% to 4.4%, and we're probably going to be seeing fewer job openings until this reverses course, and they say this is going to be sometime in 2025. Now, in the meantime, they do plan on, giving us more interest rate hikes in the near term in order to shock the market and to bring things under control and to force a housing correction. So the question is, where do we go from here? So all of this is really national, but when it comes to real estate and real estate markets, what's happening locally is most important. What's happening in California is different from what's happening in New York, and certainly different from what's happening here in the entire state of Florida. So let's look at some real data right now about the South Florida real estate market, just to get an idea of where we are headed. Okay, so what is going on in the real estate market here in South Florida? So as we spoke about, 2005 through 2008, the mortgage crisis and real estate market is what really tanked the entire economy. This time it's kind of a 180 and the total opposite. What's going on in the economy is affecting the real estate market. So we know about interest rates and inflation. So what is that doing to the market here in South Florida? So I have the Fort Lauderdale area pulled up, Broward County, and you can see right here, this green line, and this is the big story. This is the amount of available or active homes. Now you can see the huge difference going back. So 721 all the way on the left is a little over a year ago, but we can see we are right now at 6839. So you can see every single month we're going up. More homes coming on the market, which is good for buyers. At least it's going to be easier to find a home. And we can see right here, if we click on this market highlight tab, for the first time in quite a while, we are in a neutral market and not a seller's market. So homes for sale are up. Homes closed are down, homes placed under contract is down, but more homes on the market, and it's a neutral market. And another big thing is the months of inventory. So if we click months of inventory right here, we can see again, basically going up every single month. So we pretty much, or almost doubled the amount of time it's taking for homes to sell from a little over a year ago. So it was at 1.5 in July of 2021, and now we are at 3 months of inventory. Again, we are in right now a neutral market, so more of a balanced market. 6 months of inventory is going to be a buyer's market, but between 3 and 6 is what they call a neutral market. So good territory. Market is definitely adjusting, and we're heading more towards a normal, stable real estate market. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap it up right there. I hope you got something from this video, and as always, I do appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, I would love to be your real estate resource. If you have any plans of moving anywhere in the South Florida area, you can reach me 24/7, and I look forward to speaking with you and making your transition a very smooth one. Until the next time, I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.